Well, what do you know? We're here again. Yeah, we're here at the Neutral Zone. Welcome, everyone. Well, good morning, everyone. We are now in the middle of June. We just passed No King's Day, or actually June 14th used to be Flag Day. Now I guess it's No King's Day, Trump's birthday. We passed all that. I saw on the news, I guess, a clip about 3 seconds of a military parade, but the parade that I saw was thousands of people out here in Maui, one of many, 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 many sites across America saying, "We no like the king. Stop this, you king, you Trump." The President of the United States, we honor the position, or I say we, me. But the chaos that's been created has been locally felt already, and we're just beginning this 4-year term. So I just had to mention that because it's been weighing heavily on my mind. I don't disrespect America. In fact, I love America. I've been here my whole life. Very happy to say that. But what I see now needs a lot of review. So I came in here today with someone that was here before, but he is a psychologist, and I'm going to ask him opinions about what he's seeing in the press. I know this is Dr. Santo Triolo. He has been here before. He has a book that we talked about before. We're going to talk about it today again. The Psychology of Stupid, which is a novel, but very interestingly written, because as a psychologist, as I went through, I said, by the way, you can jump in. I will dominate this mic if you don't just cut me off.
That's fine. That's fine. I like listening to you anyway, so go ahead.
Well, I really appreciate when I started reading the book, I said, Dr. Stoner. And I thought, is he making fun of people that smoke pot? And then I stopped for a moment and I thought, wait a minute. Remember those words? We used to do jumbled words as a kid. That's his first name. That's not. So I get it. Here we're going to have a teacher teaching a class about all kinds of different things, and they're going to be identified by chapter heads. This is a really fascinating book because it's clearly by an intellectual. Dare I say that?
I don't know. We'll find out at the end of the hour, right?
Well, no. You really are very, as I was reading it and, reading the asides that you say as a professor and the things you use, very, very smart. You're catching nuances in life that when you read it through, I just thought to myself, this is really well written. It really communicates deep concepts.
Well, my motivation stems back to when I was pretty young. You probably remember that. You're about my age.
I've never been pretty young. I was pretty and young. Okay.
Anyways, back in the 60s, the late 60s and early 70s.
Yeah.
And I remember telling someone once that we've done away with all kinds of wars. We don't need any wars anymore. It was a time when you make love, not war, that kind of thing. Do you remember
we
that?
were really all in this bubble, thinking that we were making some gigantic change in the world.
And I actually remember how naive I was. I actually told that same person that if you want to see a tank from now on, you're going to have to go to a museum because we're not going to use them anymore. They're not going to be viable anymore. I was wrong. After World War I, people were saying that, this is the war that will end all wars. And they went to Sigmund Freud at the time, who was very popular. And you know who Sigmund Freud is, right? He was a psychiatrist.
Everyone in the world knows Sigmund Freud. Maybe you young people don't.
Yeah.
Ego, remember that? Ego.
Yeah. At any rate, they asked him, they said, what do you think? It's going to be the end of all wars? He shook his head. He goes, no, you just don't know the human psyche. And he was right. So, but to switch things over to more optimistic points of view, I think that if you look at the long history, we're moving in the right direction. there's ways in which we can sort of tabulate. I mean, we're beginning to recognize things like, slavery is not such a good thing.
Wait.
Go ahead.
Who's we, white man?
The human, yeah, the human being. I mean, the human being, and it's not perfect. Of course, it's not perfect. It's pretty terrible, actually. But I think that we're much better off than we were maybe 100 years ago, 200 years ago.
Did you see what the new Pope Leo said?
No, tell me.
Oh. When I saw it, I thought, well, that's sort of being very outspoken for a young and new Pope. Let me see if I can find it easily. Probably, I'm going to search for it just for a second, find it. So I really enjoyed your book. Every time I pick it up, I realize each of these chapters kind of stands alone.
Yeah.
In that it
covers different
covering
things.
a different concept.
Yeah.
Like, I picked out a couple that maybe we can talk about, but
Sure.
I know that you yourself, it's like when I ask about it, I think, well, we just sort of have to read a piece of the chapter because you say it so well. Every question I'm asking you, sort of answering it in the book.
Yeah.
Very, very rich.
So what did the Pope say?
Well, what did the Pope say? He said, I hope that I can find, yeah, right, that's the question. What did the Pope say? He said, I'm wondering where I put it.
He's a first for me because he's the first Pope that's actually younger than I am.
Oh, that's
kind of
right.
scary.
He's a young Pope. I don't see it, but basically he said, you can't be mean and do the things you do and call yourself of God. Basically,
Right.
He put Trump front and center. Didn't have to use the word.
Right.
Again, I don't. You can find it. Just put in, what did Pope Leo say about Donald Trump? It'll come up. They've created a meme on social media. But
Yeah.
basically, bottom line is, you can't talk love and not act it.
Right.
He's caught every time he opens his mouth.
Yeah.
So
that I'm a developmentalist, right? That I work with children. So I have a developmental schema that I
I'd like to
understand.
know more about that.
Yeah. But, what I do is instead of looking at people and say, oh, he's evil, I ask myself, what level of development is this person? And then, and you start to analyze a little bit, and you figure out, this person is like in the 70s, 79 years old, but he's probably like a 2-year-old in a lot of ways, in the way he thinks.
2?
Yeah. No disrespect to 2-year-olds, but
Well, that's right. No disrespect to 2-year-olds.
Yeah. So basically what I do is I just look at how stupid people are, and what they're doing. They can't see past their nose. Oh, answer the phone.
Is that me or you?
It's not me, that's for sure.
Well, it's someone thinking they're calling in, but we'll leave them alone because we aren't ready.
They're welcome to call in.
No, we don't know who and what that is. I can tell you one thing. What you just said about people being stupid. What does stupid mean? It means not doing what logic would have you do.
Yeah. And remember...
Is there a standard?
Yeah, it's just basically going with your emotions without any thought behind it. That kind of stuff. Oh, we have company.
We have company.
Okay.
Oh. See, we have a visit from Tony here. By the way, we're at KAKU 88.5 FM, the voice of Maui. Simulcast on Akaku, Maui Community Media, Channel 55. You can find us as an app on your phone under Maui Stream. You'll find the 3 stations of Akaku Media plus the radio station. You can look at Maui Neutral Zone. You can go to YouTube and go to @DreamMaui and the number 1. In other words, if you're looking for us, you can find us. And we are here. I'm here with Dr. Santo Triolo, who wrote a book called The Psychology of Stupid. And also, there's a little book, probably, I guess you'd say, very close to your heart, My First Trip Around the Sun, about the first year of the life of your son, and then
Correct.
on so, huh?
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so he was born with cancer.
born with cancer.
Yeah. So he had basically like 60%, maybe even more than that, cancer in his left eye, and they had to remove the eye.
Wow.
And then he had a pretty large tumor on the right eye, and they used radiation to get rid of that. So by the time he was 6 months old, he was pretty well, he was under anesthesia at least 24 times, maybe even more than that. They needed radiation in order to get rid of the tumor on the right eye.
Wow. And this was a good while ago.
Yeah.
Treatment changed very much since then?
Yeah, it has. It has. They gave him 9 beams of radiation for 25 days straight.
Wow.
I know. And he was only 6 months old. So it basically destroyed a lot of part of the brain where you have speech. So he couldn't talk. He still can't talk very well. He's nonverbal. But I wrote sort of a log of everything that was going on. And the reason why is because I assumed that, at some point he's going to look at me and say, how come I only have one eye and everybody else has 2 eyes? And so I figure, okay, I'll just give him the log and so you can read it pretty much, as it happened. Much better than me explaining it to him. Well, he can't read. He's not, developmentally, he's having problems, and he's autistic at this point. So I have all this log material, and I decided to take the first year of that log and turn it into a book. So it's actually written verbatim. So if there's some mistakes in the grammar or anything like that, I just left it alone because I wanted to be as true to, my log when I was doing that in real time.
Yeah.
But I do have a sort of an introduction to explain, what the log is about. And I do have an epilogue that, sort of put everything together. And
he's growing up as the years going on.
Yeah.
Wow, you've been a dedicated and loving father, I tell you.
Well, it's been fun, actually. Actually, he's really made the difference. And I call him my Zen master. In fact, if you let me read, I'll read the section. Get an idea what this is. And it helps me navigate through life a lot easier. Let me see if this... I hope I can find it now. All right. So during my son's second trip around the sun, another tumor was discovered in his eye. This is a 3rd tumor. He was treated externally with cryotherapy. In plain terms, the tumor was destroyed by freezing it. To be honest, this last episode of cancer hit hard because we expected, hit harder than expected because it slapped me out of my sense of denial. The family was so exhausted over the previous year that we interpreted the following 2 clean 4-month checkups as indicators that we were home free. I so wish that it was the end of the road that I lulled myself to believe Joseph's cancer was now in the past. And so this new tumor awakened me to the reality presented back when he was first diagnosed. This is a genetic disorder where the risk of cancer actually increases each year of life. If I am to be a good parent, denial is no longer an option. So the next question is, how do I navigate through life knowing that my son... Sorry about this.
It's okay.
How do I navigate through life knowing that my son does not have the tumor-suppressing genes necessary to fight off other cancers? The answer, of course, came from Joseph. The day the new tumor was discovered, he was treated with cryotherapy immediately. I took him home right after treatment, where the whole family was in tears. As the anesthesia wore off, and Joseph began to feel the effects of the treatment, he also began to cry. I had him in my arms trying to comfort the poor baby, but who could blame him for looking at his bloodshot eye? At one point, it was decided to plug in one of his favorite Sesame Street tapes. All I remember next was that Big Bird was singing. Joseph stopped crying. He slipped himself out of my arms and began to dance to the music. At that moment, he became my Zen master. Thank you for the time. Sorry, I broke down.
No, I mean, obviously it's a very significant event in your life. And like you say, we learn so much from those that are going through it. I had a different but similar. My mother got old and had a stroke, and then couldn't walk and was in a assisted living facility. And whenever I'd ask her how she's doing, she'd say, "Perfect. I'm perfect." And you know, she was there and perfect, and she was my Zen master. You know?
So, I'm pretty lucky. Because I can't really complain too much. And you know, life is tough. They have all kinds of crazy stuff going on these days. But he helps me. He helps me just be centered.
And he gives you gratitude every day when you see how much love is coming from him and from you. It's worthwhile.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me read. I appreciate that.
Please.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nice. I'm sure you guys out there in listening audience, it's nice when you know that someone that you're speaking with is kind and sensitive human being. Kind of helps. It also helps when you're reading a book that's called The Psychology of Stupid. You put it on the line here. You really let people know there's a few marbles that are rolling around loose.
Yeah.
Can I pick on a chapter and
Sure.
kind of dig
Go ahead.
in? Now, the chapter titles are really indicative of what's coming. Here's one. Chapter 14. How are nuns and prostitutes alike? Well, that's a real good question. So when you think about it, you want to put it in a nutshell? You want me to just stab around? I read it, and as I read it through, I was thinking you were comparing so many things about the way people are and how, who would think that a nun and a prostitute are doing the same thing?
Yeah. So one of the components of the chapter is trying to integrate and understand what human sexuality is all about and the development of human sexuality. So I cover that in that chapter. And one of the things about our culture is that we seem to sort of carve out sexuality from the rest of our lives. It becomes sort of an entity. It's behind closed doors. We don't want to talk about it. If there's a book that has anything in it, you gotta get it off the shelf and burn it, right? You know what I mean?
Right, America? Is that what you're thinking these days?
Yeah. So the aim of sexuality as we get older and we reach maturity is to integrate that and become sort of integrated with our lives so that emotional intimacy and physical intimacy are together as one. And we're not there. We're really not there. I mean, if you think about the cosmetic world where, breast augmentations are going on, and now there's just every single other pill that you get on television is how do you enhance your male, figure and blah, 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 all that stuff. So we're still focused in that kind of, we call it, well, Freud called it, somewhat of a distant and phallic in nature. And so we want to move beyond that. We want to move to a place where, the integration of, intimacy, physical, and the integration of intimacy, emotional, are all in one. We come together in one. And when that happens, you don't really care too much about what size you are or what, breast augmentation are needed or whatever, all those other things.
In other words, when you integrate the spiritual, physical, and emotional, there is no judgment left, and so you're comfortable.
So I'm giving you the answer. How are they alike? Well, nuns have carved out completely any sexuality. They don't want to deal with it at all. So their life, they may be full, but still is carved out. Prostitutes, they're basically more interested in the business of it, right? Rather than, an integration of intimacy. In fact, they don't want intimacy involved in the act of sex. So that's the reason why I wrote the chapter with the title of that. And that's our goal as human beings, to sort of integrate, our sexuality with our wholeness of who we are. Make sense?
Yeah. When you have patients, do you follow a certain? I mean, I always wonder. You treat each patient as an individual, and do you deal with a whole thing, or do you concentrate on an area based on recommendation? How do you do that kind of thing?
Yeah, I have guidelines. I went to school to have these guidelines and so forth. But every person that comes to me, I treat as a human being, a whole human being, and separate from all the other human beings. So I want to know a little bit more about their lives. I want to know what their unique nature is and so forth. And, you can get 10 people with the same diagnosis. And just recently I was talking to someone, the diagnosis was autism. But all 10 of them have their different worlds, and they may be completely different from each other. Some have autism where it affects them in terms of social functioning, and they're really pretty bad about, making friends, connecting with friends, and so forth and so on. But others are sort of completely different. They have insights. They're really good with understanding what the world is like. In fact, they're so good that they actually see how stupid the rest of the world is, and they rather step away from it because they don't want to deal with it. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a different ball game altogether, and you have to treat this person differently compared to the former one that I was talking about. Does it make sense?
Yeah, I always wonder when psychology is difficult to measure except as it's reported to you by the patient, right? Do you have other ways of measuring?
Yeah, we have psychological tests that we give.
But based on questions. So it's like they can try to, I don't know if they call it try to fool you, but they may give you answers that are their interpretation of how they're doing rather than...
And you have to take that into account. You just have to take that into account. And the testing is not just questionnaires. Like, for instance, there's an ink block test. The Rorschach ink block test. You probably have heard of it before.
Oh, sure, Rorschach.
Yeah.
My old butcher. No.
Your old butcher. Yeah. So it's really hard to fool that. And it really it goes in deeper into the subconscious and so forth. So you don't really know what's going to come out, and you don't know how I score it. It's not just the content. It's not like, I see a baby or I see, two guys, walking down the street. It's more like, what kind of movement is going on, what part of the card are you using, how you integrate one part of the card with another part. There's like hundreds and hundreds of different scoring things. In fact, it takes me about 2 hours to actually do the proper scoring.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's something we obviously didn't
Well, you see it on
realize.
TV. It's like real quick, like, oh,
Right.
yeah, you hate your mom, that kind of thing. That's not true. That's not true. And everybody has an enemy within. Anybody has something that, it's crucial to them. It's causing them problems or whatever it happens to be.
And you can read all that through the way they view these images.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you can pretty much tell a lot of stuff. I have a friend of mine. She was just down the hall from me. In fact, we had lunch together yesterday, and she brought to her friends saying that she wanted to take the Rorschach when she heard that I do the Rorschach test. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. First of all, it's very expensive in terms of time and energy for me. And secondly, I don't want to know all these things. The reason why I do it for people is so that I can help them. If there are certain things that they're doing behaviorally that are causing problems, that they keep finding the wrong guy, they keep finding the wrong job, or they keep messing up, they don't understand why they're messing up. This would be good to take a test like this to try to figure out what's going on,
Wow.
Yeah.
I had no idea. I mean, like you said, they go through it on TV so quick.
Yeah.
You think it's instant answer.
Yeah.
Can't feed it into AI. This is going to take some personal experience.
Well, they have computer programs that actually do that. You give them the raw scores, and you give them the scoring that you have, and then they have like little paragraphs you can help. I never used it.
Like astrology, they come out with these little preset paragraphs.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Bunch them together.
Well, the hard thing is the scoring. The hard thing is that the computers can't do that. So if you see, for example, a beautiful red flower, okay, I may score it as color first and then form. The form is the flower. Somebody else may score it differently. It may be like, oh, this is a flower, and it's so brightly red. Well, the form comes first, and then the color comes second. Well, that sequence actually makes a difference. Okay. I don't want to get into the weeds too much.
But I understand.
Yeah.
That it's way more subtle than people have really understood.
And the purpose is to actually get into the weeds a little bit more to help people, especially if you have someone that, for example, I had someone who was like mildly depressed. This is years and years ago. It's not in Maui, okay? She was married. She had 3 children. She had a pretty good job. She was loved by her children, loved by her husband. Financially, she was fine. And so she came to me. She just didn't understand why she was just mildly depressed all the time. Like, never really enjoyed everything completely. She loved her children. There was no question. She loved her husband. There was no question about that. And it took some time. It took a long time, actually, for me. And eventually I figured out that during her adolescent years, she wanted to go into the art field, your field. And she got sidetracked by falling in love and, dating and, of course, getting married, having children and so forth and so on. And she sort of bypassed that goal that she had. Her subconscious didn't let her go. He said, what did you do? You messed me up. And so we worked on keeping the life that you have, but moving toward the artwork that you wanted. And so one of the things that was available in this town, somewhat here, the Alva Theater and so forth, where people can actually try their capacity to, their talent to sing or to perform or whatever happens to be. And I introduced her to some people that, might be interested in, hiring her and doing some volunteer work on her part. Guess what? Depression started to fade away. But
that's beautiful.
Yeah, but you don't know this stuff until you get deeper and deeper into the psyche of the person. And of course, she felt guilty because here she is feeling depressed, and she has a perfect life. She has beautiful children. Kids are doing great in school. Her husband loves her. Blah blah blah. What's wrong with me? Why? That kind of thing. Make sense?
Yeah. What I hear is someone who had the luxury, I guess you'd say, to be able to either afford you or have it under medical coverage. There are so many people out there, I'm only guessing, but I know it's true, that don't have
and it's going to get worse.
Easily available service like you.
Yeah, it's going to get worse. It's actually going to get worse. And it takes a long time to get to, the clinical psychology level. Most people don't want to go there because financially it's not worth it. The cost of education these days is ridiculous compared to when I was in school.
Yeah.
I was very lucky. I got a scholarship to get my PhD. Well, I don't even call it a scholarship. I had to work. I had to teach at Ohio State University.
Okay.
But, they gave me free tuition, to go with it, and they gave me a stipend. Guess what my stipend was every month? $325 a month.
Isn't it amazing? Like $325 used to be enough to be a stipend.
No, it wasn't enough.
Even then it wasn't enough.
Yeah. So it was pretty tough. But, I remember starving, in the last, few days of the month until I got my check or whatever.
Yeah.
I would walk everywhere because I couldn't afford, gas, even though gas was a lot cheaper then, that kind of stuff. But my rent was $140 a month, which was, I thought, very expensive at the time, but it's a joke now. It's nothing. So.
Well, isn't it amazing? I mean, when I think about the numbers now, when someone talks about a house worth $1 million, how do you compare $1 million now to way back? You really can't compare it anymore. When we were growing up, remember when you say, if you have $1 million, you could probably retire. Or $2 million, man, you'd be super rich. Now, maybe if you're lucky, you can buy a house in Kahului.
I know. It's bad. It's really bad.
And the jobs, we're still using the same currency, but jobs sure haven't kept up with that
No,
rate.
they haven't.
You
So
know.
we have this huge gap that gets wider
man.
and wider. Yeah.
And you know,
It's done on purpose, by the way. You know that, right?
well, I don't know who's doing it. Who's doing it.
Well, I mean, how do billionaires become billionaires?
Well, yeah, right.
Yeah.
It's like Trump starts a new company and he's in crypto and he's made $600 million. That means someone's lost $600 million. That's how that works.
That's right.
Someone wins, someone loses. They never bring that piece out. That the stock market, it all balances out somehow. For every win, there's a loss. That one is not often brought up. But anyway,
Yeah.
well, boy, okay.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. You know that when I hear about and you're treating patients, that really interests me because this book, as I see it, and I'm sure you probably see it, is like a handbook, so that a lot of people that might have come through your doors that would find it to be a little too expensive might read this book and suddenly elevate their psyche. They're able to really get a good a hit of what you do as a psychologist. That's what I like about the way you structured it, because you sort of set it up with different areas of interest, and you cover a lot. I mean, just to read the table of contents is, a journey, a fun journey. You mind? I'm just going to pick on you a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
Nah, I don't pick too hard.
Go ahead.
Statistics don't lie. People lie. What's that one about?
Statistics. Yeah. So the important thing here is that statistics are just numbers. They're just, mechanisms where you can make some analysis. And, it's important for people to understand that. If they don't understand that, then that's how Las Vegas becomes Las Vegas. No self-respecting statistician will ever go to Las Vegas or play in Las Vegas. They just know better.
Because they know that
They
set
know
up
better.
to lose.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. And if they understand the psychology of it, because every once in a while somebody wins. And what do they do when they win? The lights go off, the buzzers go off, ding, 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 and all that stuff. And everybody, claps their hands and so forth and so on. They do that on purpose.
And then they feed the kitty again. They
Right.
take most of that and put it right back.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I had an aunt, she went to bingo, and the first time she played, she won like $400. It was really pretty. She won the jackpot, whatever happens to be. And guess what she did the next week? And then the week after that, and the week after that.
And she never won again.
She gave it all back. She gave it all back. And it's designed that way. They set it up in such a way so that when somebody wins, everybody knows about it, but nobody, talks about it or puts a finger on someone that's losing, and especially if they're losing their house or whatever it happens to be. That's usually in the background or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And insurance companies are the same way, by the way. Did you know that?
I'm sure I do, but let me hear. Insurance companies set up because they know how much risk they have,
Right.
and they build in their profit based on a certain level of risk. Is that
Right.
what you mean?
Right.
Well, like when they have a hurricane and suddenly they have massive disaster, too many in a row, it throws off the numbers, no?
It can, but they cover for that too. Florida, for example, that pretty much covered. If you look at the insurance companies in Florida, a lot of them would take off, they'd leave, but the ones that do stay, they have their statistics. You're talking about statistics. They have their statistics down. They know what they're doing. Plus, here's the bad part of it. It's in the book there somewhere. They all have loopholes. They provide loopholes so they don't have to pay out when a disaster does happen. So Katrina, for example, one of the loopholes they were using was this damaged by wind or was it by water? And it made the difference as to whether they're going to pay out, whether it's for wind or if it's for water. So you had people that lost their entire house. There was nothing there. It was just a lot. And, they had to fight the insurance company to go with it.
Because it was the wrong kind of
Yeah.
disaster. The wind got him, not the water.
Right. I was on vacation, and you okay?
Oh, I'm perfect.
Yeah.
I just look up.
Yeah.
I'm not looking at God. I'm looking just to see how we're doing time.
Okay.
We're good.
So, anyways,
I can see God. He's over everywhere.
really,
Or she. Okay, I'm good.
I need your glasses. Yeah. I was on vacation, and while I was away, someone tried to break into the house, and they broke the screens. I had several screens that were broken in the windows and so forth. And so I, turned to the insurance company, and they said to me that, yeah, we'll cover it, but every screen that's broken is a separate account, separate. So I had to pay a deductible for every single one, which is ridiculous because the deductible is more than it would cost to fix it, that kind of stuff. So they have it, they have it down to a science. They're really good at it. I had a leak in the pipe. This is a separate situation. Same company, by the way. But the leak there was 2 leaks, one more than 9 inches apart. Because it was 9 inches apart, those are separate claims. So I had to pay a deductible for this leak, and then 9 inches plus another deductible for the second one.
Wow.
Yeah, it's they're designed to make money. They're just designed to make money.
Is this a regular insurance company we all know?
Yeah.
Wow.
I
guess we didn't read the fine print. Wow, that's really funny.
Yeah.
Because the part of the leak was 9 inches apart, there's separate incidents.
Right.
Who's reading that into the policies? My God.
So, anyways, but the actual problem was that the pipes were copper, and I had well water, and this was in Georgia. I had well water, and I guess the minerals from the well water was eaten away, and that's where the leak came from, so forth.
And copper is preferred over the old lead pipe, so there is no winning for losing. We remember that expression.
They're going for plastic. I had to replace the whole thing in plastic and so forth, but it was on my dime,
And that stuff gets brittle over time in different kind of climates too.
Right.
What do they call it? Planned obsolescence. That's what they call that one. It's just like you say, they're doing it on purpose. They don't make this to last forever. They make it to last for just a little bit longer than the warranty period.
Right.
I don't know how that. Like you say, it's all planned. It's built into the system.
Right. Well, they're in business to make money, and how do they make money? They have the customers to give them the money.
And you can't give them something that will last forever. You'll never see that customer again.
That's right. There you go.
Wow. Don't you love that? Isn't that just a terrific thing? Well, I look out there. I see all of you. I am watching you. Put on your pants, Junior. I have been now doing this show here for a handful of years now, 7 or 8, and this is the kind of stuff that intrigues me the most because we're really giving our public a chance. This is a way in to find more about themselves. Have you been able to go out into our world now and identify people that like a Donald Trump and that group or not? Or GoDaddy? Don't get me started. They're calling during my show. They're worth a little bit of heat, by the way.
Yeah. A lot of them are sort of locked in. Once they're locked in, you just don't convince them. It's just, I don't argue with 2-year-olds anyway, so.
So what do we do about half of our country? How do we point out how mistaken they may be? How do you do that without alienating them?
Yeah, the answer is pretty complicated, I think. I think one of the things that's kind of important is that our education system is really pretty poor. I mean, it's very, very poor. And, most people don't know about, checks and balances. If you actually ask them questions about what the government is and what it entails and, what's the Constitution, a lot of them won't be able to answer it.
So the quality of our education system
right.
doesn't give them the tools to even be able to discover the answer.
Exactly. And now, is that by design? I don't know. I mean, I can't tell you.
Well, you know, I think once the internet came and people could get a lot of information without it being handed to them through a school, right? They can go anywhere in any direction. And how do you know when you're looking at information?
Whether it's the truth or
Whether
not.
it's the truth or not.
Right.
That's the biggest
Yeah.
issue we're facing now. And people that want to slant it, like you say, you want to slant it this way or slant it that way. It's all in
There's a section.
presentation.
There's a section of the book on AI. It's like towards the end. I think it's chapter 21.
In fact, when I read that one, I thought, man, this is a great chapter. It's called Artificial Intelligence, the Human Brain, and Free Will.
Right.
Boy, it was just, your chapters are so rich in their content.
Yeah.
You guys, you have to read this. I'm not really doing a good job of explaining. But this book, and each of these subjects, you really go into some depth. Like, see, there we are. Go Daddy. You don't want to be on the air with me, Go Daddy. I'll tell everyone how you... That'll be fun. You guys don't know that behind this calm demeanor, I have been, what's the word? I do not know how companies, I guess we say it, insurance companies build in their way to sneak out. Providers of services find their way to sneak out of delivering what you really wanted. The whole system is really, really askew.
Yeah.
Can you, I guess there's nowhere for you to make recommendations to how do we change society?
One big recommendation is beware of buying services that you get the service later on. Let me say that again. Beware of buying services that you get the services later on. Okay? You think you're buying something, but then when you want to get the reward for that, whatever that happens to be, there's some loophole that will keep them from getting it. This is also in the book. It's part of the insurance stuff, okay? And this actually happened to a friend of mine. Her father was dying, and she wanted to change her flight so that she could go and be with him. And he was in hospice and everything else. We had documentation and everything. So she bought flight insurance ahead of time. And she wanted to change the flight and so forth so he can go back home ahead of time. And the insurance company that she got, flight insurance, whatever they call it, they refused to pay her. They refused to cover it. And I was on the phone, I don't know for how long, just trying to justify things. The first question was, well, is this a close member of the family? Yeah, it's her father. But does she live with her father? No, he's in hospice. So they had all these. So whenever you make a claim, for example, okay, you're going to have all kinds of questions given to you, okay? And what they're looking for is the loophole to sneak out.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? They're not there, asking you, oh, gee, are you okay? I'm glad you survived it. I'm glad, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. They may say that, but what they're looking for is a way in which they can,
avoid them being on the hook.
Right, exactly. Make sense? You get it?
Yeah, but
it's the American way.
that when we say does it make sense, what really gets you is it makes sense and we don't like it, so how do we change it? That I don't know.
Well, just use your brain. Remember that frontal lobe, right? Remember that last time we were together? Yeah. So, for example, all that stuff about, having a warranty, those warranties are loaded. They're backloaded. The best thing you can do is to save enough money so that when the whatever item you bought, whether it's a washing machine or whatever, you have enough money to replace it. Because if you're paying every month to have this coverage, a lot of times when you really need the coverage, they walk away from it.
So basically self-insure. That's what he's basically saying. Yeah.
And that's how insurance got started, by the way. The history of insurance company was that we would all pool money together. And when somebody's in trouble, we use that fund to help that person. But that was the whole idea of having insurance. But now it's become more of like, how much profit can you make, kind of thing.
Well, even in that, they have to somehow have enough. So there also is a matter of how do you not pay claims.
Yeah. So
even in the best situation.
So the answer is, education. Make sure that you're educated. Make sure that you have the facts, that you learn, where you're at, how people are treating you, and so forth and so on.
Do you have much input with administrators and educators for some of the things that you're talking about as you go forward?
No, I'm not an industrial psychologist. I did do some of it. I was, but I did it to help people in the industry rather than changing policies and so forth. I did a little bit of that. For example, Synovus, which is a company that, I don't know if you've heard of Synovus at all, but
I have, but I don't know why.
Okay. Anyways, well, they have lots and lots of people that they hire doing computer work. They're in front of a computer screen and so forth. And a lot of them make mistakes. And what I've noticed is that they have like a window. You want people to be smart enough not to make mistakes, but not too smart because it's an entry-level position, and they're usually gone by 2 months or 3 months, and they'd have to rehire and so forth and so on. So they're looking for that sweet spot, that window, in which they could have bright people, but not too bright, so that they can reduce the mistakes. And there was actually a formula that I helped out with in terms of how much money you spend for training someone in front of the computer, how many mistakes can you tolerate and so forth. Can the people that do the program eliminate mistakes by actually going step by step with the people that are hired and so forth and so on. So that's the kind of help that I've done in terms of being able to help industry. Not the last chapter, but towards the end is called Fool the Psychologist or Stump the
Psychologist.
Yeah. So I would periodically go and give these talks, and eventually I would just sort of run out of issues and so forth. And they wanted me back. I said, well, we covered everything that I normally would cover. And they go like, well, come on back anyways, and we'll just simply talk. And so they dubbed it as Stump the Psychologist. They were trying to ask me questions to see if I could be stumped. It was fun. It was enjoyable.
How can they stump you?
How can they stump me?
What would they try to stump you at?
All kinds of stuff.
Give me an example. I'm just trying to think. I'm here and stump. I mean, who am I?
One of the main questions back then was, what's normal, what's abnormal? I told them that I taught a course called Abnormal Psychology, and they go like, well, who can tell what's normal? That kind of thing.
Who can tell what's normal?
Yeah, you can.
I remember once when talking to an insurance company, I think it was, and they said, well, what is normal is a moving scale. If we take 10,000 people and we measure them and they're getting more conservative, then that more conservative becomes the norm, they call it.
But that's a different definition of norm.
Oh.
Okay? That's a statistical definition of norm. In other words, if you go to Saudi Arabia, for example, the norm is that women are second-class citizens, right? That's the norm. But is that healthy? Do you see the difference?
Oh, no, I don't see.
Okay,
Yeah.
So a definition of norm would be what is the bulk of the population go for? Okay, but that bulk of population.
But the norm doesn't have to match what's right or wrong.
Exactly, what's healthy, what's not healthy. Okay, so for years and years and years, the norm was to have slaves if you have enough money, right? But is that healthy for the slaves? It may be healthy for the person that buys the slaves, but is it really healthy for these individuals that have suffered? Okay. I have an argument there about the culture. And people say, well, that's norm for this culture. It's not norm for this other culture, and so forth and so on. But what I look at is it healthy or is it unhealthy? Okay. Mm-hmm. There are lots of stuff that goes on in cultures that are perfectly normal for that culture. But is it healthy for us? And a lot of times, because we live in the culture, we're not aware of that. For example, going to Italy, in Sicily at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, everybody's taking a nap. It's wonderful. Okay. But, I got a 1 o'clock appointment. And then after that, I got a 2 o'clock appointment. So in our culture, we don't take naps. We just plow through, whatever. The only exception I make is that whenever, I have a surgery and so forth, I ask the surgeon if they could possibly do the surgery either early in the morning or later in the afternoon, because it's a natural sleepy time of life. We have this downtime and so forth. But in our culture, we just don't accept it. See, it's unhealthy, but we still don't accept it.
Yeah, and it's become like we said.
Yeah.
It's become common, and it's not healthy at all.
In many cultures, women get castrated. There's nothing healthy about that. Nothing. Zero. And yet, it's part of the norm.
Yeah.
Does it make sense?
It makes sense, but it makes no sense, right? The psychology of stupid. For some reason, I am so intrigued. Every time I look at the cover, I look at it and I think, let's see. You look a lot like Einstein on the front of this, but yet just everything about it is so much fun. You've kind of made light of how we all are, but you talk so deeply and share so much in this book. This is a must read. It really is a must read. And I'm going to encourage him that we're going to get it in audio, I hope, because I have trouble with my eyesight as much. But I've really enjoyed this. Every time I pick it up, I just hear what? I'm sorry you got that impression. I can understand feelings related to unfairness. You talk as a professor like a psychologist, which I'm telling you.
I used to teach,
reason. But it's so nice because when you're reading this book, it really it's a real processing. It's almost like self-help book. It's like maybe that's a funny way to describe it, but maybe not. It's so you don't have to see as many people. Maybe you could do some mass processing.
There's a section on IA, artificial intelligence, which is a real major topic. It's towards the end of the book.
Well, yeah, IA. That's the one that we were talking was AI.
Yeah, AI. I'm sorry, AI.
No, that's all right.
Yeah. So I'm not too concerned about AI. I'm concerned about the people that use AI, because there's a natural lazy tendency for us to just simply let the machine take over.
Yeah.
And sometimes we have these policies and so forth that are stupid or ridiculous. And that's in that chapter about the Kirky, you've read that? Yeah. That, you just follow the procedure, you follow the policies without thinking it through and, using common sense.
In this chapter, by the way, it's for example, where someone is going to say, look, this thing says I'm dead and I'm not dead. Here I am. And when you go through the whole process and then they automate everything, the whole system is so screwed up. And all these rules.
But the reason why is because we abdicate to the machines. I'm just doing what the machine tells me to do. I'm just doing what the computer tells me to do.
Rather than thinking, does this make any sense?
Exactly.
We've now plugged in and let the machines take over, if you will.
Right. So I'm not worried about the AI issues, the computers and whatever. That's not that important. In fact, I'm glad that they have these type of programs. They can actually program. But we still are the masters. If we advocate against it, then we have some problems. So start using your brain, and your brain is going to be more important than any kind of machine will come up with.
That's our bottom line. When you get rid of this, you realize that you got to plug back into your own brain and take more credit and responsibility yourself for the way your life is going. And packaged minds, the holy trinity of psychology, mental health versus Mother Nature, bureaucracy, is it a living creature? Great subject titles, great content. I really think you all should. The Psychology of Stupid by Dr. Santo Triolo. I really am enjoying it, and I really enjoy you. You're very lighthearted, and if I came to you, I would realize that you really care. I can just feel that, that sense of really caring, which we all want in our practitioners.
Well, you give me the space, and I appreciate that.
Well, let's see here now. I've got a minute and a half space until the end of the show. If I was going to say, okay, I'm going to give you the floor for a minute, what do you really want to say? What did you hold back? I love ice cream.
I love ice cream. Yeah. I wrote the book because I'm getting older and I want something to go beyond my life. And hopefully it'll make it. I'm not sure. It's a book that gives you some thoughts, but it's also a book that gives you some direction for behaviors. And I think that's kind of an important thing.
Yeah.
So
don't mind me. I'm just getting ready for the end while we're talking.
Is that right? Okay.
That's all right. I am very happy to have you, Dr. Santo Triolo, The Psychology of Stupid, and My First Trip Around the Sun. I don't know if you'll find that one quite as easily. Dr. Santo Triolo, look up there on Amazon. You'll like to see it and make it a new friend. It's really been a terrific thing for me. I've really been enjoying it. We got 10 seconds left, so I'm going to thank you once again. And I'm going to thank you guys for joining us. Come back again, and we will have a lot of fun together. We're at the neutral zone, and we're going to check out for the week. We'll see you next week.